Hi, my name's Tristan and I'm the host of the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. I was born, raised and continue to live, work and ride my bike on the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Wadawurrung people. I acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the country on which this podcast was recorded, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. The Gravel Cycling Australia podcast acknowledges that Aboriginal sovereignty has never been ceded. It was and always will be Aboriginal land.
The thing that makes Melbourne great is the people, and I happen to be one of those people who've just decided, I've worked around the world, seen all these other great events in great cities. I wanted to showcase how cool Melbourne is. And really I just put on a party, as in a space for people to show how colourful they are. So without me putting my hand up to organise something and the people filling that space, there's no culture.
Welcome to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. Gravel cycling in Australia is booming. From racing to bikepacking to simply getting off the beaten track and exploring the backroads and trails of our outstanding natural landscapes. This accessible subculture is all about community, adventure, and discovering or rediscovering the joy of life on two wheels. Join us as we celebrate Australia's gravel cycling scene and discover the locations, explore the events, and meet the people at the heart of the sport. Welcome back to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. It's King's birthday. I've just got back from a long weekend away and I'm feeling a bit down. I took the bike out, was hoping to get some really good riding in for the first time in a while, down around the Otways, and I was keen to get the bike out. I'd been running road tyres, so first things first, I've got to clean this up, got to get the gravel tyres back on, and that's when it all turned a bit sour, unfortunately. I was all set up, ready to go, start pumping away, and pop, the trusty old track pump had died in the arse, unfortunately, so that left me with a little hand pump. Managed to do the front wheel okay, but yeah, just could not get the rear wheel to sit. Ended up getting the air compressor out of the shed. Could pop the tyre on the rim, but as soon as it deflated a tiny bit, the tyre was just popping off. So yeah, I reckon my 4-year-old Schwalbe G1 bites are probably at the end of life here, and I probably should have foreseen that and taken some extra rubber out with me. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't get out on the gravel tracks this weekend, which, I was desperate to do it. I was really keen to get out there, but geez, we had about 100 mil of rain down over the Otways over the last 3 days, and I think it was raining about 80% of the time I was down there. So if you've been out riding this long weekend, kudos, and I hope you had a good time. But I think if you're in the southeast of Australia, you would have had a pretty wet time of it. But because I wasn't out on the bike, I did have a little bit of extra time, and I've managed to cut together a great chat that I had with Fyxo, the man, the myth, the legend of Melbourne bike scene. I caught up with him last week just to sort of get to the bottom of what Melbourne bike culture is. I thought he'd be a great person to talk to around that theme, but also to catch up ahead of what is going to be the 20th running this year of the Melburn Roobaix. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this event. It's an iconic feature of the Melbourne event scene. As Fyxo goes to describe, it's a bike event, but really it's a bike party. I see a lot of similarities with this event with the Beechworth Granite Classic that we've previously covered on the pod, and I just love these events that capture and celebrate what it is that I love about riding bike, which is all about really community and culture. But before we get into that chat, I thought we should have a bit of a roundup on what's been happening in the Australian gravel scene. It's been a bumper few months for events. I think we last caught up just before the Beechworth Granite Classic in early April, but sort of over the last few months there's been a lot going on. There's been a lot going on in the elite race scene. So we had the brand new event for the Australian Gravel Championships. This was the Ponderosa Pines gravel race in South Australia. So that was a 102 kilometre course. It was 2 51 kilometre laps with 1,200 metres of elevation in total. And Mark O'Brien solid to the finish in the men's race to take out his first national championship since under-17s, I think I read. So, yeah, congrats to Marco. Bit of a surprise that he hasn't had a national championship given the calibre of rider that he is. And also Tiffany Cromwell outsprinted Talia Appleton and Rebecca Henderson to take out the Women's Australian Gravel National Championship for 2025. So, from there, the elite guys moved on to the Devil's Cardigan down in Tassie, a newly minted UCI Gravel World Series event. And there we saw Trekkie take the win ahead of Tasman Nankervis and Scott Bowden. And Talia Appleton was in the fray of that one as well, soloing to the finish after Tiffany Cromwell had a puncture there. So congrats to Talia and Trekkie on that one. And then it was over to the other side of the country for Seven, which is, quickly becoming perhaps Australia's premier gravel cycling race. Of course, being the host of the 2026 UCI Gravel World Championships. They're building that event into something real special. Mark O'Brien, again, was prominent there, taking the win for the men, and Tiffany Cromwell in the women. So it was a national champions affair all around in Seven. Just wanted to take a moment while discussing all this great Australian gravel racing, just to shout out the Roadside presented by Zwift podcast by Jethro Nagel and Tom McCracken. So Jethro's been doing great podcasts with the Press Room for a few years now. You're probably familiar with him, but him and Tom have joined forces and rebranded to Roadside, and they've been doing some great previews of gravel racing events. So if you're into that sort of stuff and you want to learn more about the races as they're coming on, definitely recommend subscribe to Roadside. Soon amongst that elite race calendar, we've had a number of other events, the Dirty Pig and Whistle in Creswick here in Victoria, the Thunderbolts Adventure up in New South Wales. So real thriving gravel event scene as we head into the colder winter months. And I know the gravel seems to be a bit better in winter in a lot of the country. I think that the rain and the cold sort of holds the gravel surfaces together, and they're often quite slick and fast. So a good time to get out riding your gravel bike. And, of course, we've had another running of the big one, Unbound Gravel over in Emporia in Kansas, the world's biggest gravel cycling event, the world's biggest gravel cycling race. It's amazing how international this event seems to have become. And, I think our little gravel scene in Australia can only sit back and be amazed by how big this event is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's sort of North America's largest cycling event at this point. And what a phenomenal effort from Trekkie. He's come in 5th, made it onto the extended podium there. His top result ever at Unbound. He made it into the early breakaway. He chased the eventual winner, Cam Jones, all the way to the line. And just wanted to give a huge congrats to Trekkie and say that Australia was watching and absolutely proud of what you've done over there in the States. So with Cam Jones taking it out from, over the ditch in New Zealand, that means the past 2 editions of this world's biggest gravel cycling event have been taken out by our little countries down under, which is pretty cool, I reckon. And hopefully we can continue the tradition going forward. I reckon Trekkie's got one of these wins in him. All right, I think that is a good point to jump into our chat with Fyxo. So just for a little context, those of you who don't know who Fyxo is, as you'll hear, he started life as a bike messenger in working in London and here in Melbourne, got into the depths of the Melbourne bike scene and has been part of it and a part of the Melbourne bike culture here ever since. He's a guy who really has his finger on the pulse, a finger in every pie. He's been running bike events here for over 20 years, and as you'll hear, the showpiece event of his is Melburn Roobaix, an absolute party on bikes. 20th year coming up, so I thought it was a great chance to catch up with him and discuss all thing bikes and all thing Melbourne and all thing mixed terrain riding. Here is Andy White, aka Fyxo, and the Melburn Roobaix. Alright, so I had a bit of an epiphany the other day. I was going through the fire hose of Unbound content on Instagram, and I saw this reel of Trekkie, and I love Trekkie. He's a friend of the pod, top bloke. Absolutely admire what he does in the gravel racing scene, but he's there sharing his nutrition plan for the day, and he's telling us how he's slammed 120 grams of carbs an hour, 7 bottles of scratch, 18 gels, and I nearly puked in my mouth. I was like, this is not... I love him, and I love following the gravel race scene, and this is awesome. I love Unbound, but this is not real life. This is not what gravel cycling is to me, and it's not what gravel cycling is to most people, I don't think. So I was like, right, I've got to go outside, touch some grass. I did that, and I came back and I thought, who can I talk to that is going to bring me back to reality, bring me back to what I love about gravel here in Melbourne? And I thought of one guy, and it's Fyxo. So, mate, thanks for joining the pod.
Thank you so much for recording this ramble and the opportunity to just talk bike. Obviously, it's something I'm very passionate about, and it's funny that you bring up the way gravel is trending, which is very, very elite cyclists, and it's a long way from perhaps what a lot of us thought of as gravel as just getting out casually, socially. It's really been filled with the space of the elite. And there's parallels actually. If you look at Red Hook Crit in the early days, it was dominated by bike couriers riding track bikes. But as soon as a few elite athletes got a sniff of like, oh, I could win this, or I could get lots of exposure here, I feel that that's almost identical what we're seeing in the gravel scene now. And the people that help make it cool, they're now so far in the dust of the elites, it's not even worth talking about. But it's still, look, there's a space for everyone. And I think that's important too, no matter what your taste in gravel or cycling is.
Yeah, I think most people probably fall in that bucket too. Like, as I said, we're not many of us are elite racers. We love riding gravel for other reasons. And at the end of the day, I think we're all just want to be bike dorks. And you are the self-proclaimed chief bike dork of Melbourne. So, yeah, really excited to have you on.
Gons gave me that mantle he calls me a dork, and I love bikes. And I think one of my best, longest bike career mates said, only cyclists think they look cool. And when he said that, I had to laugh because it's so true. We do think we look cool, but to the outside world, we're totally not cool. And I'm happy to embrace that as a dork. So yes, I am a dork at heart.
All right. So who the hell is, or what the hell is Fyxo, and how did you become Melbourne's biggest bike dork?
Wow. I mean, if you want to call me Melbourne's biggest, that's fine. I don't know that I am. Look, Fyxo was originally Fyxomatosis, and around 2001, Radiohead dropped a new album, and there's a track in it called Myxomatosis. And as a kid, I had a pet rabbit which got myxomatosis, and it's a terrible disease. It ultimately kills the rabbit, but it's highly infectious. And I was riding track bikes. So I'd come back from London, and I was riding track bikes, and everyone was asking me, why are you riding this bike with one gear and you can't stop pedaling and no brakes? What the hell's up with that? And I was just talking to people, and some people like, you know what? I think I want to try this thing. And I was building bikes for friends, and then another friend would infect another friend and infect another friend. And I thought, this is just like a disease. This is long before COVID, right? Infectious diseases become highly well known. I just thought it's a fun way to describe a way of transmitting passion for like a subculture from one person to another. So Fyxomatosis, terrible name, hard to spell. And a few years in, I just chopped it to Fyxo, and that's how it came to be, the name. Yeah.
No, it's a great story. I think we can all relate to that feeling of getting infected with the bike bug. It's a nice link, actually. I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, but my day job, I'm actually a veterinarian. So, they've got a little connection.
You've done a lot of study. There you go. Well, I'm glad that you understand. It is graphic. It's horrible what it does to them. Their eyes bug out. And look, I buried my pet rabbit that died in the backyard. We released it into the backyard, and then started to hang out with wild rabbits who'd built up immunity. And yeah, so I hope I don't build up immunity to the bike disease, and I hope others are willing to embrace it and get infected, because the disease can morph. Like I started with track bikes, which I don't ride now, and road bikes. I raced road, and I've always been a mountain biker, and I love exploration. That's where the gravel thing really took a hold of me. Just exploring, and riding with friends. That's always been a big part of it.
Yeah. So have you ever been like a hardcore roadie, or you sort of always been a bit alternative?
Define hardcore. Look, I used to race the Northern Combine. I used to race regularly at Northcote on the track. I've raced one open at Vodafone and crashed in front of all my mates, and actually Matt Keenan. There's a video clip of him commentating because I crashed. That's about as close as I've got to taking road seriously. When I was a biker in London, and I came back to Melbourne in 2003, and a friend of mine, Finn, said, "Oh, you've got to check out this ride called the Hell Ride. It's really hard." I'm like, how hard can it be? And because you meet in, you meet in Mordialloc, I think, and you go to Blackrock, or no, you meet in Blackrock and you go to Frankston and back. I haven't done it in years. Anyway, so I just turned up on my track bike, skate helmet, cut off jeans, and I actually met one of my lifelong friends on that ride. Dominic Briscombe, but and it was hard. It was definitely hard on a track bike, but I also just did it to just see if I could. And I've dabbled with road racing, but I don't know if it just was a bit stale for me. And I came from a bike career, kind of punk rock environment, and road was very, very serious. And look, I'm not a serious person, so I don't think it was ever going to really take a massive hold over my life. But I did love racing. Like, I am competitive, and yeah, in a race, I love it. So, and then look, in that era of when I was taking my bike riding seriously, that's when I broke my neck because I was out training and went over the bars, broke my neck, and that really kind of helped bring things into focus. What's important? Riding bikes is something I want to do forever. Taking it serious, not so much.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we just love riding bikes because it's a fun thing to do, right?
It's a great thing to do. Yeah, it's a great thing to do.
So one of the other interesting things, and maybe this is a bit local chat, but there's something special here in Melbourne, I reckon. There's something about the bike culture which is just a bit, yeah, as you say, a bit different, a bit dorky, but also a bit sort of unique and special. Can you sort of define what Melbourne bike culture is?
Oh, it's in the water. I mean, it's the tap water. No, but it is interesting, and I have thought about why Melbourne is special, or why any city is special, because I've travelled and worked around the world, and ultimately it's the people, because it takes someone to decide either they want to do something different or be something different or showcase the city or, integrate with others. Without those people, I mean, there is no culture. So I would say, well, much like Melbourne's vibrant food culture, we have the Italians and the Greeks to thank from like coming out in the 50s. Definitely Melbourne bike culture and the Hell Ride, which I know mentioned, that's a big part of Melbourne bike culture, started by two coppers who just wanted a fast ride. But there's been lots of dirt crits, the Hawthorn racing midweek at the Boulevard. Without the people who've like, you know what, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm going to organise this thing, and people fill that space, there's no culture. So I would say that the thing that makes Melbourne great is the people, and I happen to be one of those people who've just decided, I'd worked around the world, seen all these other great events and great cities. I wanted to showcase how cool Melbourne is. And really, I just put on a party, as in a space for people to show how colourful they are. So without me putting my hand up to organise something and the people filling that space, there's no culture. So I would say it's the people that make the culture, and it's greatly assisted by the terrain and the weather, because it's harder to ride year round. I mean, I've been to other parts of the world where you just can't ride year round, or it's almost impossible. So very few people do. And if the city's terrain is challenging, then less people are likely to ride. So Melbourne has a few things going for it, but certainly it's the people. Like, without the people that are just really passionate, no culture.
And those people and the culture itself, it seems to span quite a wide spectrum. Like, we've got all these little niches in there. You've got obviously the roadie scene, but there's also this sort of other, you can go mountain biking on some of the Yarra trails even, but, there's a lot of really good mixed terrain riding for people who are obviously a bit less serious and probably more in tune with this particular podcast. You can get out on the bike paths and as you say, the cobbles and the back streets of Northcote. There's something sort of for everyone, and I reckon you can really kind of find your little place in Melbourne's bike scene, no matter what sort of rider you want to be.
Absolutely, and I'm one of the rare people who's brought everyone together, regardless of which branch of the cycling religion you subscribe to. I subscribe to them all, and like, as a older guy and a dad now, I'm gravitating towards the bike path. If I see a cycle lane or a footpath, and look, Lance Armstrong talks about this all the time. Like, I want to minimize any opportunity a car has for just even coming close to me, let alone running me over. I'm all about, and again, this was heavily influenced when I traveled in the States and London, meeting people who are into transportation alternatives, meeting people like critical mass, people that are like pro cycling infrastructure, whether it's an organisation like Bicycle Network, just hanging out with all these people and hearing their take on bikes. And it's very easy to think of bikes as the racing element of, but it's actually a tool for moving around spaces, cities, the countryside. So I think that's been a big part of me, just bringing everyone together. It doesn't matter what type of cyclist you are. Our event's all about everything, anything two wheels.
That's probably a good place to ask you, sort of trying to bring everyone together. There's sort of been this history of this chat about some sort of north of the river, south of the river divide in the Melbourne cycling community. Do you see that as,
there's a river.
A barrier for mingling?
There's a river.
Yep.
Look, we briefly had a retail space south of the river, and it's different. People are different. It's more affluent. It was my immediate take. It's certainly immediately south of the river. I don't go south of the river. I barely go south of Plenty Gorge at the moment now, these days. I wouldn't say there's a divide. It's always, like if you go into any city, London, there's a north and a south, kind of like us and them. I've never been about creating a divide. As cyclists, we're already on the fringe. Why the hell would you want to create another dimension? And I used to joke the only cyclists that weren't welcome at Roubaix were recumbents, because I had a really bad experience with a guy on a recumbent. But we've had recumbents ride, and they're great because there's lots of people who can't ride a traditional bike. There's assisted hand cycles that, like, again, if you ride a bike, you're already in the minority. Why would I want to categorize you like, oh, you're a cyclist from the south riding a penny farthing? I don't want to have anything to do with you. Like, that's absurd.
It is absurd. I can get behind that.
Look, it probably makes for funny banter at best. Yeah.
Obviously, another huge part of Melbourne culture and Melbourne bike culture as well is coffee. So I believe you're a bit of a connoisseur. Is that right?
Wow. I drink a lot of it. I always have. My mum used to give me terrible, Nescafe or Blend 43 in a thermos, a Star Wars thermos, when I was in grade 2.
Grade 2?
Yeah, I know. It's probably terribly irresponsible. I suppose I got heavily into coffee when I made some really good Italian friends when I was in uni. And then I've always drank coffee and got more heavily obsessed with, similar to cycling, like espresso culture, coffee machine culture, coffee roasting culture. And look, it is a big part of Melbourne, and we're fortunate again because of the people in Melbourne have brought culture to Melbourne to make it great. So again, without those cool people doing cool stuff that they're passionate about, there's no culture. So a big part of we should be grateful for is all those people that are super into coffee that makes Melbourne great. So yeah, but I drink loads, probably 6 or 7 a day. Yeah.
Wow.
That's normal, right? My heart's great. My heart's great. Yeah, I don't think there's any downside to drinking too much caffeine that I know of.
So why have you got a philosophy or an idea about why bikes and coffee seem to go so well together? It's just something we can enjoy as a community together.
I suppose it's a drink that doesn't make you bloated. I mean, there's physiological benefits to having caffeine. It's a social element to start and conclude a ride. I don't know why. It just is. It just is. Coffee, they go hand in hand. And for a lot of people, beer and cycling go hand in hand. I'm not a drinker myself, but there's people that are equally as passionate about beer that I could talk about coffee. Or I think maybe just eating and drinking, put it under that umbrella post and before rides. Again, just don't narrow it down to coffee, although it is a massive part. And again, I suppose we have to be grateful for people like Cafe Racer, which was an institution, that became the place to meet and congregate, like a church. Like, oh, okay, we're going to church on Sunday, we're meeting at the church, Cafe Racer for riders south of the river. That was a big part of that.
Where are your favourite coffee spots?
It's about 5 meters from here. It's my coffee machine. Again, I joke about where I live in a bit of a cultural vacuum for food and drink. But I like Genovese are massive supporters of what I do. But honestly, like at home, that no jokes, like I love, much like the vinyl culture of like music, you can have music easily by Bluetooth, but there's something about pulling like an LP out of a sleeve, putting it on the player. Oh, it tastes better. It sounds better. Does it? I don't know. But I love, something that hearing the grinder, the machine warming up. There's something about that process as much as the consumption of caffeine. So
yeah, it's therapeutic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I do it like 8 times a day.
So you mentioned there that you spend a bit of time in Plenty Gorge. What's the gravel like around there? And what are your other sort of favourite places to ride in Melbourne for mixed terrain?
The best. I mean, the thing I love about where I live is the riding, because people that live closer to Melbourne have to ride for like 40 minutes to get to the good stuff, whereas I can literally ride gravel roads from my doorstep and wiggle my way all the way out to King Lake and create massive loops where I don't have to touch the tarmac. And again, that's just because I live way out in the boonies. But I love the gravel networks, and it encourages you to explore. Like whenever I see a little squiggly line of map, I'm like, have I done that? I'll go check it out next time I'm out in that area. So I love the curiosity that gravel kind of has, where it's like, where does that go? What is the road surface like? So not only do you know the roads, but you kind of get to know them by how pinchy or how loose the gravel is. Whereas a bitumen road's kind of like a bitumen road. So I definitely love the gravel out here. There's loads of it. Obviously, Northern Grody's Matt starts his rides just down the road in Hurst Bridge. And again, I think the terrain has helped popularise that, because you meet in Hurst Bridge Station and it's like, which way do you want to go? Point your wheels, there's gravel. So
yeah, huge shout out to Matt and the Northern Grodies. He's doing great work there for the gravel community here in Melbourne. If you haven't gone on a gravel group ride, then definitely check out the Northern Grodies and get down to one of their events.
Awesome.
So I guess the last sort of piece of the Melbourne cycling culture I wanted to touch on is obviously fashion, and coffee and bikes all seem to go together. So what's your philosophy on cycling fashion and attire and cycling kit? It's
funny. Yesterday I was talking to my mate Jamie from Skin Grows Back. We were messengers in London, and there's a spoke card from an alley cat where he's wearing all white and holding his bike above his head. And I was asking him about that because I made something similar just the other day. And he said, I found that beanie on the ground and I turned it inside out, cut the label off, and I was wearing it. And these Japanese people came up to me like, oh, where'd you get your beanie? He's like, I found it on the ground. And I was joking back to him that, like, similarly, I was in Covent Garden one day and these Japanese tourists came up to me and said, oh, you look so cool. What is your style? And I said, I pulled on the first fresh things that I found this morning, because I had a green ski beanie, red T-shirt, blue jean, like wild. I've never really given a huge amount of thought. I suppose the common thread for my fashion has been bright and colourful and loud. The upside to that is being highly visible on the road, certainly increases your chances of being seen. And a lot of the playfulness of the stuff I do is Fyxo is all about parroting brands that I absolutely love, and infusing that into my own stuff. So yeah, but fashion, I'm not going to put my hand up and say that's on, that's not. But I definitely don't ride in my undies anymore in terms of lycra. Having said that, I also mentioned this to to Jamie. I met my wife for the first time and I was wearing a skin suit because for a joke, one of my mates gave me a Minuteman skin suit, which is like the iconic Crumpler Melbourne bike courier company. And I travelled the world and I would wear this skin suit, which looked ridiculous. But it was, I mean, again, I thought it looked cool.
Did you have a bike with you at this point, or was it?
Yeah, I was right. I mean, but I mean, I was a bike courier, so I'd ride my bike. You'd lock it up outside, and you walk into buildings in a skin suit. So you're in an elevator in a skin suit all the time. But the first time I met my wife, I was wearing a skin suit and it's a Minuteman. So there's a bit of magic in that skin suit.
So you've got a bit of your own apparel range. Can I call it an apparel range?
Yeah,
it's probably more merch, right?
T-shirts, shorts, pants, socks, sweat tops, etc. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I'll just think of something that'll make me laugh and I'll just put it on a T-shirt. So we are not pretending to be like an apparel empire. It's, again, like I think I found one of the T-shirts from the first Melburn Roobaix, and I was making shirts before that, but I would photocopy a design, get an acetate piece of plastic and cut out a stencil and then get a paint roller and roll that onto a T-shirt. That's how I used to make my first T-shirts because, again, I'd seen how in that era street artists were translating their art onto walls using stencils. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if you can do that with graffiti, you can do it with T-shirts. So, yeah, that's kind of the extent of our apparel. Yeah. But don't worry, Rafa, you're safe. You're safe.
You're no stranger to gravel. Melbourne's obviously been a great place to ride a mix of surfaces for as long as bikes have existed here. But what are your early memories of like the specific gravel scene in Melbourne, and how have you seen that evolve over the years?
It's not a new thing. No one was talking about it in a sense. I mean, I was just riding bikes off-road. It wasn't called gravel cycling. It was just called riding your bike. And it still is very much riding your bike. And early days, I did like these self-proclaimed greatest Victorian bike rides where I'd just say to my wife, I'll see you in a week. And I would just plot a route from pub to pub to pub to pub around Victoria, with like 250k a day, and just sleep in the pub, wash my clothes in the sink and repeat it, rinse and repeat. And I really enjoyed, again, like I wonder where that little road goes. I don't have to take the highway. I'll take the dirt road. And just the scenery was spectacular. And I did a lot of riding, great rides with Dan Hale, who was into it like before I was, and I was seeing his rides. Also, Scooter, another bike courier mate, had this event called the Cannonball Run, which was riding from Sydney to Melbourne. So again, other people were doing stuff which I was getting influenced by and just really enjoying it. The exploration. I mean, I grew up as a Cub Scout. I've always loved the outdoors. Getting to see that kind of environment where there's animals and there's just random interactions with minimal cars, that was a big part of the early gravel scene. And obviously as that's evolved, the bikes have also evolved. Like I think about the first bikes I was riding, I had a Concord road bike that I jammed 28s into. That was my gravel bike. And then cross bikes became popular because cross bikes, you could run bigger tires. And here we are now with like a categories that are dedicated to, and there's subcategories of gravel now. There's aero gravel, there's racing gravel, there's touring gravel. Yeah. But that's been my experience of watching it grow. And I think it's one of those rare examples where a type of bicycle has actually grown the market. So like no one knew what fixed gears were, but they were kind of like the skateboard or the surfboard of the 90s. And people, because it was being talked about so much, people were like, oh, I'll try one of these fixie bikes. And they get a brightly coloured one, ride around a bit, start to enjoy it. Oh, maybe I'll get a nicer bike. Maybe I'll get a road bike. Oh, what's this gravel about? Oh, mountain biking. And again, I've found that track bikes, as highly impractical as they were a really good gateway vehicle to the bike disease, which, you know, we all love. So gravel, I feel, is great in its really bringing people in because it is more social than other forms of, like, it's the racing scene where it's intimidating if you're just starting out, whereas I love what Matt's doing. It's like, ride whatever bike. Like, we don't care what your skill level is. Come along, do a short ride, work your way up to become like a better cyclist. I think that's really important. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have like a low barrier to entry of like just riding your bike. I think that's huge, and gravel is a big part of that.
You must have seen some appeal there because you got in pretty early with Gravel Camp back in 2018. What was that event, and what were you sort of trying to do there?
Gravel Camp, it was just, again, I suppose when I think about it, it's my love for burning stuff, like having fires. No, like jokes aside, I love having those end of day campfire chat and going out into the, you know, rugged terrain of other places. So Gravel Camp was bringing together lots of people who just into the same kind of idea of like, let's go for a ride. At the end of the day, we'll have a really nice meal because we had some really bougie foods and desserts, and we'll sleep in tents, and then we'll go around a campfire and we'll talk about all the other things we love. Because, I mean, I love bikes, but I don't like talking about bikes as much as maybe people think. I love that it's a conduit for meeting really interesting people.
Yeah.
And certainly, like, I'm not talking about the latest SRAM transmission or XTR and da-da-da-da. There's people who love to deep dive in that. I'm just more interested in, like, people's stories, where they've been, because ultimately that's the stuff that's influenced what I've done in the future. Like, oh, you're, like, I've got a lot of friends that are 10 years ahead of me, and I always say to them, like, I feel like I'm looking at the future me, you know, because their kids are older or they're like doing other stuff. And like, oh, okay, in the future, I would like to aspire to do that stuff. Gravel Camp was just an excuse to get out, bring people together, and put on a fun experience in its simplest philosophy. Yeah.
Are we going to see a return of that at any point?
Look, 2019, we planned to do it again, and then we had the fires, and then obviously COVID came along. I would love to do something again. However, there was no competition when I was doing it, and it's a highly competitive space. I will say that, and with all of our events have a very different style and flair because there is no race element, and I want to have the broadest appeal where possible. And I would love to do it again. So with the support of the right partners, I mean, I could probably flick the switch and we could make it happen. So if you want to come along to Gravel Camp, it sounds like you could be one of the first. But yeah, like it's, and I've realized that I can't do everything. And certainly if I try to, can't even do it well. In the last couple of years, I've tried to rein in all of the brain farts and just do one thing really well. And I would like to think that Melburn Roobaix is that, and events. So there is room, certainly, for us to do another event. We used to do a summer version of Melburn Roobaix called Tour de Melbourne. So we're teetering between, maybe we should. But you know, I just like focusing on doing Melburn Roobaix really, really well, and which is a big emotional toll, I suppose, on both Melody and I. So, and then we have a bit of a break, which is nice.
Yeah, fair enough.
Don't say won't happen again. And people have asked, and it's finding the right space. And I'm kind of going on about events now, but I'm always analysing other events because at the end of the day, now I'm older, I'm not 20 anymore. I actually think with a small bit of financial canny, like, how are we going to make money doing this? because if you have one further away, then you reduce the appeal because it's a higher commitment. So there's all these complex things which I never thought about when I was 20. I'm like, who cares? We'll just do it. So it changes, gets different as you get older and wiser and slightly more conservative. So, yeah.
So more recently, you've done a bit of a big gravel ride. You flashback the Vic Divide.
The best.
Tell us a bit about that.
The best. I mean, the Vic Divide is a ride for highly experienced cyclists, and I would say mountain bikers. People have done it on gravel bikes. I think they regretted it. Lewis designed it as a mountain bike route. I loved it. Within the three of us, we rode different bikes. Hugh had front suspension. I had drop bars and rigid, and Adam had a super lightweight titanium bike with front suspension. I kind of wanted to make it a bit harder for myself by running rigid and drop bars, kind of John Tomac inspired. But we were blessed with fantastic weather, and I would actually like to do the route again at a different time of year, because it's one of those things with the seasonal changes. The high country, you get to see it in a different light. We did it in the tail of summer. We were having swims in the river and the like. Obviously, that's not something you're doing in the middle of winter. And you could also carry more gear for the appropriate conditions. So, but if you are a mountain biker and love getting out and you've got some similarly minded mates, put it on your to-do list. It is such a great ride.
I'll have to work on my mountain biking skills before I give that one a crack, I think.
Yeah. Well, I would say there's but there's some parts that there's high exposure. If you go over the side, it's good night. And because Plenty Gorge is just full of that, I didn't bat an eyelid, but I know some people they talked about the technical aspects because it's my day-to-day. I didn't kind of playing down maybe that aspect, but it's a serious consideration and I would tell people, as with all things, if you find a feature you're not comfortable with, just walk it, get past it and continue and continue, have a good day rather than trying to risk it for small reward.
All right. So I, along with many, many thousands of other people, follow along your Instagram page. One of your favorite hashtags is "Life is too short to ride shit bikes." So what is a good bike and what are your favorite bikes?
Wow, a good bike. So the genesis of that tagline was my mate John Prolly Watson, who you may know from the Radivist, one of the best cycling culture websites, period. I would have him out to cover all my events if I could arrange it. This was after I'd broken my neck. And the reason I broke my neck is because I had a secondhand set of wheels and someone had replaced the bearings and they hadn't used the right size bearing. So there was play in the front hub, and over time that play had released the quick release, and that was literally my undoing, because the wheel came out of the front and I went straight over the handlebars. And actually, the era I was talking about was when I was racing and training, and my coach, even one night I was doing an ergo session on rollers, and he goes, "That front wheel looks a bit like it's on the piss and all over the shop." I'm like, nah, it's fine. I was riding around with the front wheel barely hanging in. So a good bike is really just one that's in good running condition. And I used to work with bike couriers and have a pedal on their bikes. I'm like, how do you do this job on such a piece of shit? So it's really not a diss to people that aren't on fancy bikes. It's just having a good bike that's running true, brakes are working, shifting smoothly, because ultimately it nearly was my undoing. And so life is too short to risk your life trying to be a tight ass. So don't be a tight ass. It could be also, you could substitute it with.
So you're doing some work now with Surly. They seem like a pretty good fit. Yeah, they seem like a pretty good fit for Melbourne bike culture. What makes them special?
So to me, I like their DIY punk approach. they don't do year-to-year models. They just do rad colours that are, I suppose, what's the word? You either love or hate. They're kind of polarising. People might hate them and then years later realise, oh, I wish I bought that colour because it was so, out there. Early days, my first experience of Surleys was the 1x1, and I just thought these are plumbing pipe rudimentary pieces of shit. And to be fair, that bike wasn't a great bike. But as the brand's evolved, I love almost their Lego approach. Like, here's a frame. It's got all the points where you can modify to add on and evolve as your bike use evolves. It can fit fenders. It can fit large volume tires. It can fit racks, front and back. It's really it can be whatever bike you want it to be. It's made out of steel, so it's going to last. It's durable. I mean, and it's just cool. So I was doing builds. I think my first Surly might have even been a Wednesday fat bike. And then I was doing a few e-bike conversions with the Surleys because it just was so much easier. And then I got a Karate Monkey from Off Course, formerly Commuter Cycles. And I just love the simplicity of it. I mean, I've always been a single speeder of sorts. And it's like a bike without frills in a sense. And there's the lack of pretense. It's a lot of the kind of things that I gravitate towards. And people do a lot of cool stuff to their Surleys and on their Surleys. I'm thinking that was the thing that really captured it for me. These bikes are designed if you want to do this with your bike, it's ready. If you want to do this with your bike, it's ready. It's capable. It's whatever you want it to be. And here we are. And so Adam reached out when he started with Surly and said, we want to support Roubaix in a big way, and the rest is history. And I love it, them deeply, because partners make events possible, and in the absence of, it would be very difficult to run an event. And it was honestly a dream come true because they're the bikes I was riding anyway, right? And my daughter rides one, and she loves it. We customized it because she didn't like the color, so we powder coated it, and we just got some custom stickers for her, which for the longest time I've always been about just stripping bikes, re-spraying them, powder coating them, stickers. And I suppose the origin of that would be from a mate, Gons, who I met from one of the very, very first swap meets in Melbourne. So again, this comes back to people and culture. And Ben Randall gave me this pursuit frame, like a track pursuit frame with a 650 front fork, and it was a Carter, in a Melbourne or Victorian made frame, and it was rusted, and it hung on my garage wall for years. And I'm like, oh, this thing's do I throw it in the bin? And I showed it to Gons. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, leave it with me. And he stripped it and he painted it pink and he put vinyl decals on it and he made matching Deep V rims in pink. We took photos of it, and that bike blew up the internet before blowing up the internet was even a term. And I suppose it just really showed how you can transform a bike to have your own personality in it. And I love doing that with bikes. And Surleys make that so easy. They promote it with the Surly Make It Your Own. I think I've said enough about Surly. They're bloody awesome. And I love... And look, and the other thing is, I've had titanium bikes, carbon forks, the peace of mind of having a steel fork. And I know carbon forks, they're tough, and the steerers are tough. But I don't think retailers are communicating that there's a reason why you need to use a torque wrench and assembly. And not that I'm not capable of doing that, but knowing that with a steel fork, I can have total confidence that if I hit a rock, it's not going to fail. Or if I go off an edge and hit something, or I can load it up with a rack and my daughter can sit on the front and I have total confidence it's not going to fail. I love that. Weight has never been a motivating factor for how good my bike is. So again, like, and they never talk about it or worry about it. So yeah, I love the steel frames. And if you want to make it light, put some fancy wheels on it and some fancy parts. So yeah.
Yeah, before I even knew I was going to talk to you today, you know what you do when you're into bikes. You're on the interwebs, and I've been trying to find a bike that is like, yeah, good for sort of mixed terrain stuff here in Melbourne, but you still get that really fast road bike handling. And so I was like, what bikes have like 73-degree head angles, but you can still fit decent tires into them? And the Midnight Special came up, and it challenged me initially, because I was like, aren't steel bikes heavy and sort of old fashioned and stuff? But yeah, I'm pretty curious now to give that a try. I reckon that would be pretty sweet bike.
Definitely should. I think, of course, I even having a special on Midnight Specials at the moment. But look, I think you want to talk about steel and heavy. Dario Pegoretti challenged that notion with the whole, steel bikes, they're for the past. Like, his brand was all about the quality and the feel of steel as a performance like frame. You can make really, really lightweight steel frames, I think. And that notion's, even though there's a stigma to it, because I think people think of their first plumbing pipe bikes, cheap steel bikes, but all the Surleys have butted tubing across their sizes. So they're considering that. And for me, the durability is the big sell for me. I want a bike that, as I evolve or change my ideas about it, it can move with me. I don't have to worry that it's super lightweight and I've got to be really gentle with it, because I'm not really gentle with anything. But I think, and the ride quality, I think you would be surprised. Every time I jump on mine, I'm certainly not thinking, oh, this thing's an anchor. And more to that point, when I did the Vic Divide with Adam, and I'm going to flex on Adam right now, because he had a titanium salsa, forget the model name, whatever. It weighed nothing. I was on a Tonka truck, Surly Krampus, steel fork, heavy stuff. Well, who got up everything and didn't walk the whole ride? And they really surprised myself. There's some steep pinches in the Vic Divide that are absolute walls, and I got up it all, and I certainly thought to myself, the weight has a lot less to do with it than I think consumers are told. So don't worry about weight of steel, you know.
Oh, you're doing well if you're out climbing Adam. He was telling me once he rides up Falls Creek 4 or 5 times a week. I think, God, you must be a fit guy.
He is super fit, and I'll say this, one of the things, it was really hot conditions, and some people don't respond well to the heat, and he didn't. And like, we were all coming off the couch, really. I think Hugh had done a bit of training, but I rode with my daughter to and from school, which is 2K. So, but it wasn't a race, but for myself, I made a point of like, I was also riding flats, because this was like, again, I was just kind of challenging like preconceived notions about what a performance bike is, or what I had to ride to do these kind of difficult events. So I thought, I'll just ride flats. And it was great. Like being able to just move your feet around, floating on the pedals, heavy bike. Not once did I think, oh, this sucks. Quite the contrary, actually. It was really relaxing, because at the end of the day, I was wearing the same shoes, didn't have to have a spare set, drop bars. I just like the challenge of drop bars again. So, yeah, it's steel's awesome. Steel is real.
So just before we get to Roubaix, you mentioned riding your daughter to school there. We had a really interesting chat the other day, and you mentioned that your daughter rides to school and that she's kind of the only one that does in the whole of school. And you know, my kids are a bit younger than yours, but yeah, I walk them to school in the morning. I can't see any kids riding bikes. Obviously, like a lot of older people and, you know, adults that are in bike culture, the scene now, they started riding their bikes to school, and that's how they get started with bikes. Is this a problem for the bike community going forward? Are we not getting kids into bikes early enough? And more broadly, are we sort of broken as a society if we're not letting kids ride their bikes to school?
Oh, man, look, everyone expects because I love bikes that my kid is going to be like bike obsessed, and she is not. She is not sporty in the slightest. I've always had a bike. She's ridden bikes. At her primary school, the option to ride was not an option. It was the terrain. There was no infrastructure. So I will say, depending on where you live, the proximity to the school, the age of the student, that also dictates the possibility. I think if you don't ride as a parent, you might have a tendency to I'm worried my child's not going to make it to school if I'm not with them or don't drop them off at the school. I think that plays a big part. Bicycle Network's working really hard to create programs to encourage kids to ride. I'd love to see ride to school being ride to school like once a month. And my daughter's actually, interestingly, really passionate about it, and wears a bit of a badge of honour. Like, she's one of 7 that rides in a school of 2,000. And when she parks her bike at school, because she's got a nice bike, she's got a sweet Surly Bridge Club that I've put bling stuff on. It's got cool MKS pedals. She loves it. So I've also tried to foster that by making her proud of the bike she's riding. The parking situation initially was back corner, tiny little wheel rack. So again, this chicken and egg. If the school facilitates and encourages it, will there be a better response? It's also got to come from the parents. Depends on where you live. It's a complex issue, but I definitely think it helps set a better tone for adulthood, because cycling requires you to be independent, self-supported, aware of your surroundings and where you're going. And that's huge for a kid. I vividly remember the first day my dad let me ride off our property to the end of the street and back. I was like, yeah! And it was on a grassy footpath, but it felt epic.
Yeah.
You just don't know how transformative little things. I remember the first time I let my daughter ride to the park and back by herself. She's like, really? I can do that? I'm like, yeah, just come back, set time. And I think we've almost lost that notion of letting your kids go out, because people are, and rightly so, concerned that their kid's going to get snatched, because they see all this stuff on the Black Mirror, which is, I will put it up on the high, why society's broken. Obviously I spend a lot of time on my phone, looking at my phone, putting stuff out on my phone. But for young people, now I just can't help think it's robbing them of their youth, and it's to their detriment. So I haven't found a balance there. But one thing is, now that my daughter's riding to school, out of the blue, which I don't think she would have said last year, she's like, Dad, I want to ride Melburn Roobaix, and I want to ride with friends that we met on the Great Vic, adult friends that we met on the Great Vic bike ride. And next year I want to do the Great Vic bike ride on my own, because we did it on a tandem, which was the best. I can tell you now, start looking on Marketplace for tandem. If you've got a kid, it is the coolest way, particularly if they're little, to enjoy cycling together. But that was a great week. I gave her the option, and I'll go to school camp, or we can do bike camp, the Great Vic. And straight up, she's like, let's do Great Vic. And again, seeing how transformative the confidence building that kids get from doing it is a big ride like Great Vic, and you just can't put a price on that. So it's great that the Great Vic remains a thing. And also another thing, because kids like games, and we've had a bit of an issue with social media and gaming. I banned all games, so I'm in the bad dad corner, but there's one game you can play, and Zwift, because I've got a Zwift trainer, and so she can play Zwift. And I'm new to Zwift. I'm not new to riding indoors, but I kind of used to associate riding indoors with training and serious cycling. But I didn't realise how social Zwift is. So you can just call up your mate Gasbag and ride and train. So my daughter's going to be Zwifting. If she wants any screen time, you can Zwift.
No beanies for her.
No
I saw you sweating it up last night.
And again, like, I don't like having this nihilist take. There's a lot of stuff in society which isn't great, but or you can complain about it or you can try and improve it. And like with culture, it's the people that decide, no, I'm gonna make this space great. We all carry that burden and responsibility to kind of push against all the things that are broken. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, mentioning spaces for everyone to come, let's talk Roubaix. 20th year this year of Melburn Roobaix. It all started back in 2006. You've got a great history up there on the website. I saw the initial flyer you've got posted there, which is pretty interesting. So how did that first event get up and going?
Okay, I suppose the genesis was I'd done alley cats or bike courier races in London and loved them, and then came back to Melbourne and was wondering if they happen in Melbourne because there was a bike courier thing. And people would talk about, oh, back in the day, Petrie would organise these things. And again, I just like, oh, well, that guy's not here. Who's going to do it? Oh, and then Kirk used to do it. And there was someone decided to host a double drag race, which was a straight line race, but you had to cross dress. So like blokes were wearing, like I had a schoolgirl uniform, and the few girls that were working in Melbourne wore suits, and it rained and it was fun. And I thought, well, when's the next one? And like, well, if no one else is going to put one on, I suppose I better put on one. So I put on a fun ride and then another one, and that evolved to Melburn Roobaix. There's another bike courier, Ugly, who lived in Northcote, and he had a cobblestone alley, and he was like, all right, let's have one around, let's do an alley cut together and let's theme it around the cobbles. I'm like, oh, Roubaix, Melburn Roobaix, and spell it phonetically because like Melbourne and Roubaix, like people still muck up the name. That doesn't matter. Now I just kind of refer it as the bike party because it really is a bike party that's loosely has bikes in it, but it's really about cool spots in Melbourne, food, culture, people, and it is the people that make it really, really cool. So that's how it started. And like I had a blog, I suppose, about cycling when no one had a blog. So I had a leg up there. Wade from Cycling Tips always mentions the first time I mentioned him on his...
gave him his big break.
Well, yeah, because he got like a spike in traffic or something like that. I mean, it's funny to laugh at, but again, there's another example of someone in Melbourne who decided, I'm going to do this thing, right? And again, it's funny how, I don't know if it's Melbourne or it's, I suppose when there's enough people, you get influenced by others. Like you see another blogger or you see someone else doing an event. So I was putting on this event. Remember the night before I was on SEN talking to Matt Keenan and Dave McKenzie, long before like Matt was thought of as the voice of Australian cycling. And he asked, how many people do you think will attend? I said, look, I've made 100 packs, but I don't know. I don't think and he said, absolutely, you'll get 100. And 100 turned up at Fed Square. Those people had no idea other than I'd put a flyer on my blog or post up something in a bike shop. They turned up willing to be like led into the unknown. I didn't even have pens for them to write with. So someone ran to Officeworks, bought pens. And at the end, people were like, when's the next one? I'm like, next one? There's no next one. That's it. And they're like, no, you got to do another one. And here we are 20 years later, one of the longer running events in Melbourne. I'm loath to call it a bike event because it has bikes, but it's really just a party of awesome people in Melbourne enjoying the city in the middle of winter on their bikes. So that's a very like a light version of the evolution. But if you jump on the site, you can see the evolution of like online ticketing. That was a big thing for us. Like having a rider pack, having a custom map, like, and the inclusions. And as a frustrated graphic designer, it's allowed me to just be creative and express myself and bring all these people together. And I had no idea when I started that it'd become so important to so many people. So I talked about not doing it again because it is challenging, but it's also so rewarding. And it's still wildly popular 20 years on, and I don't want to fade out. And so many events peak and fade out. And so many bands, like, you shouldn't have made an album after that. Like, I don't want to be that artist. But I don't feel that we're there yet. So I suppose.
Oh, it's a great story maybe this is a common thread through some of the best events, and I think this came up with when I was talking to the Beechworth Granite Classic guys as well. Like, it just starts out as this real genuine grassroots thing, and it just almost is too good to fail at that point. Like, it just has to keep going and keep growing and keep getting better because it's just so good. Like, it has that special sauce.
Melburn Roobaix hasn't grown since 2012 because we've capped entry since then because, again, wary of the bell curve of events. And I don't know if other events get greedy or they just don't consider this, but I just thought more people isn't better, and congestion is an issue. It always will be an issue. Making that more of a problem, people start to turn off, and when they turn off, they don't turn off slowly. They all turn off at the same time, and then you're like on your knees groveling, please come back. And I've seen it with so many events. And again, like, our event's under $100, and you get so much relative to other events. So again, I think there's lots of reasons as a standalone bike event why it's good value, but then there's the intangibles that make it unique to every other event I feel in the world. So I suppose, I have to do it now. I have to. Oh, God.
We should probably be a bit more explicit. For those who aren't familiar with Melburn Roobaix,
I should say what it is.
What are they actually? What can they expect if they buy a ticket and they show up?
Well, I suppose going back to the start, the first one was a race. It was a bike courier race, and a bike courier won it, Mike Macatron, who you will have seen his artwork throughout Melbourne. And then the second year, Leader Luca won, and I wasn't liking this trying to win mentality, so I stopped rewarding speed and started rewarding kooky bikes, wild costumes, and with that, the female participation just skyrocketed. The participation broadly skyrocketed, and it was just cooler. No diss to Lee, like, he's a good mate, and we love riding bikes, but I think he's even seen that, like, there's a space for places to times where going slow is super cool, and the event is you get a map, like an old school printed map, like a Melways, because I'm a Melways kid, and it's a scavenger hunt, and you get the map and you're like, oh, I got to wiggle this way. And the early days, it was required far more personal navigation because there are so many people and we were trying to navigate them safely through Melbourne. It's well designated. You could almost ignore the map, follow the signs, follow the people, and you'd make it to Roubaix. There's also side little deviations with activations, food stops, silliness, general silliness, performers, and at the end you get super cool black and white portrait of yourself to commemorate the date, which is I love because so many people use it for their Facebook profiles or their LinkedIn profiles because they're just ace. And for us, it's also like a time capsule of all the great people that have come and done the event and over time. So it's not like any other bike event because most bike events, you turn up, you start, you finish, there might be a pit stop for a water, and then you go home. At the end of ours, if you want to win amazing prizes, and I do mean amazing, like we're giving away a Gosney pizza oven, we're giving away bikes, we're giving away Zwift trainers, heaps of, like, there's nearly 10 grand of prizes to give away just for basically hanging around to the end for the raffle. And there's activations as a village, so there's a reason to hang out. So again, it's more like a party. Like, you got to stay to the speeches at the end, like a 21st. Next year is a 21st.
I think this might be a bit of a trick question, but what is the ideal bike for Melbourne Roobaix?
Well, there is. It's 2 wheels would be ideal.
Has anyone ever done it on a unicycle?
You know, the coolest thing is, like, when people say, like, oh, has anyone ever done it? And I'm like, yep, 2013, this guy. Like, no matter how crazy a bike you think you could ride or build, it's almost been done. Like, there's been a flotilla, like a Mardi Gras float of 4 miniature bikes all sinking in as moving as one. A guy turned a bedpost into a bike. There's been bikes with drum kits on the front, tandems, triple tandems, unicycles, road bikes, track bikes, gravel bikes, e-bikes, every bike, recumbents even, hand cycles. There's no one perfect bike. It's whatever you want to ride on the day. And almost in a way, it's definitely, don't ride your fancy bike because it's rough terrain, middle of winter. In a way, there's a real, like, I suppose from my own career DIY ethos. If you see a bike on the side of the road, if you're not thinking, could I ride Melbourne Roobaix on it? Then I'm not doing my homework hard enough, because I want people to see something wacky and go, oh, I'm going to do Roubaix on that. Because again, it's not a challenging distance to do. You've got almost all day to do it. So why not, if you want to, like, make it hard for yourself, ride a kid's bike or ride a wacky bike that's hard to steer or nearly falling apart, but not. So there's no one perfect bike, and that's why the end is so interesting visually. But it's every single bike you've ever seen, including the ones that you couldn't even dream up, like tall bikes. And yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
So the route itself, you said it's 40 Ks long. Obviously, this is a gravel cycling podcast. It's not a gravel event per se, but I think you're kind of capturing the spirit of the mixed terrain riding in Melbourne that I personally love, and I think a lot
there's gravel in this event. And that, I mean, there always has been. We've had sectors of Yarra Trails, and we've had sectors of, like, the Boulevard bike path after torrential rains, where it's been absolute mud bath. So while the origin of Melbourne Roobaix was a play on Paris-Roubaix and cobblestones, there's basically every type of terrain you can experience in our event. And so there's cobblestones, there's steep, hilly pinches, there's bike paths, there's mud, there's gravel, there's, you name it. There's bridges, there's train crossings, and a lot of it is the amazing bicycle infrastructure that Melbourne has. So again, like, as I'm getting older and I'm becoming risk averse when riding my bike, because I'm thinking about people I love and how they're moving around, I'm like, bike paths are cool. This event needs to celebrate taking deviations, and the chillest way is actually super cool and fun. And if you don't stop at traffic lights, it's basically the same speed. So that has become a big part and challenge for me, is, like, celebrate slow cycling, I suppose, as a movement, or safe cycling, making safe cycling cool. Because, like, it is deeply in the back of my mind that I would hate for someone to ride our event and not make it home. That's deadly serious. Every year I want everyone to make it not only to the finish safely, but also home safely. That's why, like, as much as life's too short to ride shit bikes tagline, I would say ride safe is the tagline I've had long before that.
Yes, preaching to the converted here. I do most of my riding here on the bike paths. Get out early enough. There's not too many dog walkers, and you can still have a good hit out.
Well, I mean, again, I got that from a mate in London who would sign off, instead of saying ciao or see ya, he would say safe, just safe, as in, like, be safe. And yeah, and I suppose it just, I'm like, he's caring. He's like, see you next time. I hope you take care of yourself. So it's a big part for all of us as cyclists because we are vulnerable.
So you mentioned those costumes. Obviously, it's a huge part of the event, and it's sort of, as you said, it's what get captures and remembered years down the track. You get some pretty special stuff coming down every year, as far as I can tell. And this is a competitive. You said it's not a competitive event, but I think the costumes are pretty competitive.
Highly competitive. Highly bragging rights. Mum's Jam, you can win. Quadlock products, from our partners and sponsors. So yeah, getting dressed up and cool bikes is very competitive. Very.
So what are the judging criteria there? What are you looking for?
I remove myself from any chance of being bribed because it's crowd voted by the roar of the crowd. And Melody, in her wisdom, has an app on her phone which measures decibels. So now, again, it's not like what my ears pick up, what her phone picks up. So they jump on the stage, crowd roars, loudest roar wins and takes home the jam and the prizes. So it's, again, the spirit of Roubaix is something that Melody and I, something will happen during the day and we just like to reward acts of coolness or kindness. Celebrate that, people. So that's one category that we give. But yeah, most of them are crowd voted or out of the raffle drum. So yeah, but it's highly competitive. You got to impress the crowd, not me, the crowd.
All right, we'll see what people come up with this year.
I can't wait. Can't wait. Well, to use my daughter as an example, she loves purple and she's riding it and she's riding with her friends. She's like, well, let's go as a rainbow and I'm going to be purple. And her friends are going to be the other colours in the rainbow and they're all crayons. So she's a purple crayon, there's an orange crayon, there's pink crayons, probably green, blue. Yeah. So this is how these threads of creativity evolve. And I love rewarding it, celebrating it, and I love seeing how creative Melbourne is, the cycling culture.
Oh, it's so good. So another big part, and you mentioned beer earlier on, you've got a partnership with the Bridge Road Brewers. So I think, is it halfway through? There's a pit stop at the Bridge Road Brewers?
There's an epic food and drink experience at East Brunswick Village, Bridge Road Brewers. They'll be giving away free time, non-alcoholic beer mid-ride. Of course, you can buy fully fledged their ales and hoppy hazy ales and pilsners and you name it, the whole range. And there's a bar at the finish, but mid-ride, free time. I like a free time myself. And they've been hugely supportive. And Ben is heavily entrenched in the mountain bike community in Beechworth with the trails there, as well as the Beechworth Granite Classic. So it's great to have the support of someone who I don't need to tell him what the event is. He immediately gets it. He knows how cyclists interact in terms of activations and food and drink, etc. So yeah, it's great to have a Melbourne institution like that. And they're actually doing a little fusion with Genovese. So look out for that. Beer and coffee.
Coffee and beer. Excellent. All right. So as we sort of talked about, this is a grassroots event. It's grown. It's become sort of a big, and it's a bit more official now. Like you buy a ticket online, as you said, you get, it's sort of structured like that. Is it, and you're obviously running sort of through inner Melbourne. Is it hard to get sort of community support for this? What do the police and the councils think about what you're putting on?
Throwback, I remember at the end of one of the Roubaix, Wade Wallace came up to me. He's like, oh, how did you get permission to do all this? And the police? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even ask the police. So I called up. I mean, you got to remember, like way back when, there wasn't that many people. So I did call the police, and I remember calling him up, and the big part of it, he said, is it a race or is it not a race? I said, no, it's not a race. He goes, oh, that's great. And he asked when it is, and I said, it's on a Sunday. And he said, oh, that's great. It's quiet. And then he said, how many people? And I said, oh, about 500. He goes, oh, yeah, it sounds great. Oh, you'll have a great time. Go for it. And we do have the support because the audience is respectful. Like that's like the guiding rule of Roubaix is don't be a dick. Now, I think if you look at what's happening with the ride-outs with the kids on the wheelie bikes and the converted e-bikes, a big part of the problem with them is they ride like dicks, and people don't like that. So I think it goes to show, like, if you're not a dick, you can go a long way to having big festivals and everyone loves it. So that's kind of my guiding principle, as well as getting permits for the start, finish, and activations and the like. Yeah, who doesn't love seeing people on bikes? And it's the best visual. Like, if randomly people say that they experienced today, they love seeing it. And we get the odd dog walker complaint, but out of the scope of the event to get one or two complaints, there's always going to be someone that complains. And I've also learned that it is impossible to please everyone.
No, it's good to hear that it might survive into the future. Plans? Is it going to keep going?
Yeah, it's going to go. Like, we've got, fantastic addition of partners until 2027. So I have to. But again, like, having rolling support just makes it easier to put on. And also, like, in my hippie brain, I'd love the event to be free, and City of Melbourne pay me to put it on. That would be perfect, because I don't like that any financial barrier to accessing cycling. And I think we're on that trajectory of fancier bikes, higher price of entry for events. So I'm very wary of that. So we want to keep it as like accessible as possible, and partners definitely go a long way to doing that.
Now, that's in line with the ethos of the event. I think it's a great advertisement for Melbourne, a great advertisement and a celebration of Melbourne's bike culture. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is awesome, and I would love to get down and check it out. So when is the event, and where can people sign up?
Sunday, the 29th of June. Just Google Melburn Roobaix. Even if you spell it incorrectly, it should come up, or just Google Fyxo, Fyxo, and it'll be like loud and clear in front of your face.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your views and experience on Melbourne bike culture.
I appreciate the opportunity to ramble and have it recorded, and I'm going to send it far and wide. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Have a good one.
Ciao.
I don't know about you, but that chat has absolutely put me in the mood to get down to Melbourne Roobaix on the 29th of June. As Fyxo said there, it's one of the cheapest bike events that you can sign up to if you're in Melbourne. Definitely one of the most accessible. And if you can't make it there this year, or if you're coming from interstate, I reckon this is a great opportunity to get into Melbourne and get a real sense for what cycling means to this city and the people here. And you're not sort of scratching the surface, you're getting right into the depths of what cycling is in this city. So, yeah, congrats to Fyxo and to everyone heading down. Have a great day. I hope I might get a chance to see you there. All right, that'll do us. Just before we go, please share the podcast with your riding buddies. We haven't seen much growth actually in the pod. I know I've been a bit slack on getting episodes up. It's been tricky with all the other commitments in life, but yeah, please do share the pod. I'm hoping we can keep growing this little community, and I'm sure there are more people out there who would like to delve a bit deeper into the Australian gravel cycling scene. Let them know about us and share away. A great way to do that is on social media, so I'll put up some tiles about the episode today. So yeah, if you can jump on, just put them in your story, tell your friends, that would be very much appreciated. I've also recently put up a new bike review on YouTube on the Marin Headlands 2, which is a really capable, really exciting and really affordable gravel bike for the everyday gravel rider. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of content, jump on there, give it a like and subscribe on YouTube as well. All right, I reckon that'll just about do us for today. In the words of Fyxo himself, ciao.